In part 2, Vivienne Westwood reveals how Rubens' shapely nudes helped shape the fashions of the day. First, the Hermans come out of their hermitage.
Here they were a pop band. They were a pop group who had 30-odd hits.
They were beyond fashion. They were beyond the pale.
Clean-cut, fantastic image. Boy next door, every mother would like their daughter to go out with.
Smash hotels up, ride motorbikes up and down corridors and sling things out of windows.
I think in 1 year they sold something like 12 million records in America.
In America they were more of a phenomenon.
It wasn't like we knew each other before we became a band, which most people do. You got to school with, we were all from different neighborhoods, and we got together because we liked their music.
The music we started out playing before we had a record deal was much more R&B based stuff. And obviously, you know, in the context of the band's history, looking back on it, it sounds totally bizarre, but that's what it was.
We wanted one of those sort of, in those days, cool names. You know, the Mindbenders, something unusual.
Peter put some glasses on upside down one night and looked like this character Sherman.
It was from the Bullwinkle show, you know, Sherman and Professor Peabody, but we thought it was Herman and Professor Peabody.
And we were all sort of obsessed with anything American, and we used to all call him, hey, Scheumann, and then it just got shortened to Heumann. And the Hermits just came along with it.
Well, my first contact was with the management. They were quite persistent that I come and see this band. And they sent me a postcard, a picture postcard of them. And I thought, oh, these guys look nice. And the lead singer, Peter Noon, he looked like a sort of young Kennedy.
So he went to see the band, I think we're playing in Bolton, and he saw in Peter, he thought, well, that's a superstar. And that's it. And that's how we signed the deal with Mickey Mouse.
And I'd been around the whole audience. I got my sister there and told the girls, there's a famous record producer coming tonight, so will you scream all the time through the show? And they did, you know, these girls, but it was like that scream. You know, it wasn't like that kind of, you could tell it was fake.
Herman, or Peter Noon as he prefers to be known, was somebody who was quite a talented little actor who was playing the role of a pop singer and doing it very successfully on the back of other people's talent.
And I took a demo with me of a song which became their first record, which was I'm Into Something Good. And I played it to them. One of the managers had a record player in the car. And we all got into the car and listened to it. And I said, what do you think of this song? They all liked it. And I think a week later, we were in the studio making the record.
Woke up this morning feeling fine. There's something special on my mind. Last night I met a new girl in the neighborhood. Whoa, yeah. Something tells me I'm into something good.
Recorded the A-side and the B-side in an hour, you know. Just played it. You know, because that's how Mickey made records. Next! You know, and the Animals were at the door.
I think we arrived at the studio at 10 in the morning because we'd driven overnight from Manchester, and we think we were out in Leicester Square by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, not realising we'd recorded a #1.
What happened was, I think they'd just run out of people to sign. There was nobody left. You know, Beatles made it, then Jerry, everybody had a deal. Jerry and the Pacemakers got a deal. The Farron's Flamingos, everybody had a record deal. And they'd all, as soon as you got a record deal, if you're from Manchester or Liverpool, you left, nobody ever saw you again. You know, so there was like, the only people left in town was Herman's Hermits. So it was our turn to be the next band that gets signed.
Oh, the relationship in the band in the early days, pretty good. The lead singer was very ambitious, sure, but I mean, that was all part of it.
He believed that he was above and beyond. But, I mean, we were young kids.
I think I was probably 18, and Peter was probably 16, Carl Green was probably a few weeks older. Went straight to our heads, till about 3 months later, we came right down to earth.
The first record, I'm Into Something Good, was a Carole King song. and it wasn't written for us because Earl Jean had done it. But Carole King then did write one for us.
Our second record was a flop. Suddenly you realise how fragile the whole thing is, because the second record went nowhere and everyone went, nee, nee.
You read the headlines, Herman's Hermits, flash in the pan. The one-hit wonders from North are finished.
I don't think Herman's Hermits were ever taken seriously, not by the music press. I think they were puppets.
They sharpened the pencils and stuck the knife between the ribs. They took no prisoners with it. And that was basically the way it continued, and especially when we had a lot of success in 1965 in America.
No English bands had ever happened in America to any extent, and the Beatles went there. And I realised that there was an opening there to be followed.
During that time, 64, 65, 66, that period of time, they were the #1 band in America. Them and the Beatles. It was them and the Beatles, not the Beatles and them.
It was because I was English, purely because I was English, and I could work it. I had the records singing in an English accent. Everyone was going, "Can't buy me love." And I'm going, "Mrs. Brown, you've got a lovely daughter. Girls as sharp as her are something rare." It was a bit of a wind-up, wasn't it, really? But it's sad, she doesn't love me now.
When we were doing the first album, Mickey said, we're a track short. Have you got any songs that you know that we could put on the album?
We said, well, we've got this novelty number. We can't possibly do that because, well, we can't, you know.
Which was a joke. Peter used to dress up as a little schoolboy and put a satchel on his back and sing Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter, and Mickey said, well, play it.
Things have changed. She doesn't love me now.
So we played it through once, and he said, let's hear it one more time. We played it through the second time, and Mickey said, that's it, it's in the can.
We didn't want Mrs. Brown, You Got a Lovely Daughter to come out as a single because we thought it would turn us into Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini nightmares, you know. And ultimately that was true.
Makes a bloke feel so proud.
Mickey didn't want that to go out at the time for some reason best known to himself.
The record company in America saying, oh, we've got to put out this single, Mrs. Brown Got a Lovely Daughter, and I couldn't understand what he was on about, so I said, why are you asking about this one? And he said, well, radio stations have picked up on it.
But MGM sort of offered a guarantee of 600,000 sales before it was released.
But then they had 750,000 advance orders for this single. If you release this single, by next week it'll be the highest chart entry ever.
So I thought, I don't know, I like to sell the album. Just keep it on the album, don't bring it out as a single. Then a few days later, oh, we have the demand. And I said, well, when the demand hits 1 million, release it. And it did.
And it was just a phenomenal sales leap.
The Midwest of America had this sort of a love affair with Herman's Hermits. They weren't a hip group. It wasn't like a West Coast or a New York thing, but it was the Midwest. And they could play some of those state fairs where up to 200,000 people would come and see them.
Mrs. Brown, you've got a lovely daughter. Mrs. Brown, you've got a lovely daughter.
And I think a lot of people in the UK really felt, you know, that the Americans had gone mad. You know, it was so unfashionable here. The stick was directed against the Americans rather than at Herman's Hermits. I mean, the attitude was, God, if they can get away with that in the States, good luck to them.
I don't think we'd have had much chance of that over here, so we had different releases for here purely because the market was different.
And it was like a totally new thing. We suddenly realized that this wasn't like Sunderland. This was like, you needed security because like you suddenly couldn't go anywhere. It was this whole new thing. Like every time you came out of the hotel, there weren't 3 girls there. There were like 400 girls there. And it's hard to choose from the 400. It's easy when there's only 3. You go, no, maybe you. So the 400 suddenly, we go, whoa, what's going on here?
The Dick Clark Caravan of Stars. We were on as billed as guest stars from England. There were 13 acts on this show, about 40 to 50 people and we travelled on a bus that could seat about 45.
Well, this is not an adapted Greyhound bus with beds and bars and videos and air conditioning. This is just a Greyhound bus. I mean, it could have been the number 33, you know.
To make it worse, the mileage was that great between shows. We travel overnight, every other night.
And this is how they worked it. They leapfrogged. So every other night, all this huge package tour slept on the bus. I mean, and it was literally luggage racks, you know.
So halfway through the tour, I think the record went to #1, and we released a couple of others, and they all went into the charts.
Top of the bill now. Still got the same money, but top of the bill.
Don't know much about history. Don't know much biology. Don't know much about science books. Don't know much about French I took. But I do know that I love you. And I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world.
We were happy with going out on tour and playing big gigs and the adulation, but we never actually felt personally fulfilled, successful. I don't think any of us really did, that felt that we'd really made it. We always wanted to do something else, and we were never allowed to.
MGM are calling Mickey every day. Have you got any more? How about Mrs. Green? You've got a lovely daughter.
Now, here are your hosts for this week's Hullabaloo, Herman and his Hermits.
You know, we were tempted. You know, the temptation came to let's do something else. And what should we do? Let's do Chuck Berry doing Henry VIII.
Henry VIII I am. Henry VIII I got married to the widow next door. Been married 7 times before.
We're on a roller coaster. Everything they did, even records that weren't that wonderful, were selling hand over fist.
A lot of the stuff we did was very twee. You know, that's the direction we were sort of pushed in.
Second verse, different than the first.
I like to sing and play harder music.
Hullabaloo I am. Hullabaloo I am.
I would much rather have been in The Animals or The Who. Loved it in The Who. But there again, you know, you take what you got.
I won't be too much of a ham. So tonight I'm hullabaloo in it. I'm hullabaloo I am. Hullabaloo I am.
I don't think I really cared that much about what people thought. And I bet if the Stones had thought of Henry VIII, they would have. They looked at us. We did this Ed Sullivan show, and they had a meeting afterwards. We were like 100,000 girls in the street in New York singing, "I'm Henry VIII, I am Herman, we love you, Herman." And there's the Stones going. And I went with them, you know, I went to their room and hanging out with them, and they went, "Look, it's amazing." I bet they're thinking, I wonder which song we can do from. I bet it's a George Formby song. Luckily, they came out with Satisfaction or something, which saved them.
They seemed to get on initially. Between 1964 and 67, it was a team where everybody was laughing and joking and girling, whatever it was a pantomime.
It was just a magical thing. I mean, everybody got on. I mean, that's the great thing. We used to argue and stuff like that, but it was just such a... It was just like growing. It was like, oh, this is never going to stop. It's wonderful. Look, people love us.
We were supposed to be whiter than white, clean, living young boys. And when people went out on tour with us, they realised we weren't. You know, we used to drink and raise hell and lock up your daughter's time, you know. Keith Moon's 21st birthday party, we wrecked a hotel in Flint, Michigan, and we got banned from the Holiday Inn for years. We couldn't go in a Holiday Inn anywhere in the world for years.
It would be a bit silly, you know, Herman arrested for cannabis. I mean, it would have killed the band, wouldn't it? With like the completely wrong image and everything. The Hermits would always like find it and flush it down the toilet, and then there'd be this terrible fight. You know, I'd see just the seeds going round in the bowl, and they said, "We flushed it down to save it from the drunks."
She's a must avoid a complete impossibility.
If I'd have drunk everything that everybody says I'd drunk, I'd definitely be dead by now, you know. At least my hair would have fallen out and stuff, you know. In the myth, I routinely drank 2 bottles of vodka, like, a day. I don't think many people would be able to be kind of Mr. Freshly Scrubbed.
Keith Richard drinks Jack D on stage, got a bottle of Jack Daniels, and everyone thinks that's really cool. But my drinking was a problem. My drinking controlled me. I lost control. So I just, you know, I'm an alcoholic. I had to stop. I'm recovering.
How could they know just what this message means? The end of my hopes, the end of all my dreams. How could they know a palace there had been behind the door where my love reigned of queen? No milk today, it wasn't always so.
My work consists of travelling throughout the world looking for songs which to put onto tape and later manufactured into plastic discs.
He's a great song picker. And Mickey would hear 4 bars of a song and say, yeah, I'll have that one. I'll have 3 of those and 2 of those and 1 of those. And what's in it for me?
He had the Animals and Nashville Teens and Lulu and Donovan and all these people. And I think, you know, if he chose a hit, the record companies would be likely to go with it because they felt that here was a man who, you know, really knew what a hit record was all about.
If you're thinking what I'm thinking, then you know the reason why. Why the sunset hugs the ocean and the treetops kiss the sky.
Herman's Hermits was signed to my production company. I had control over what they recorded and what went out.
At the end of this phrase. Good. Good.
If you're thinking what I'm
Sorry, you can stop now. You can stop now. Come and get your money.
I had lots of energy. I lived in London. They still lived in Manchester. And Mickey and I would go and start making records without them to get them done quicker.
There are some records that were made by session guys, but John Paul Jones was an arranger and Mickey used him all the time. He did added violin parts. He wrote the brass parts. And Jimmy Page was just a session guy. Probably didn't know what records he was playing on.
In retrospect, it probably wasn't a very kind thing to do to Derek Leckenby, but Jimmy Page was a better guitar player than him, and we were now competing with the Stones and the Beatles and the thing. So you go, let's get the best player.
And we used to argue with, especially Lech, who was a very good guitar player, said I can play the guitar player better, the guitar part better rather. And Mickey used to say, well, there it is, you know, I've done it, tough.
I can't understand why it matters. They played on a lot of their records, and some of the records they didn't play.
So listen very carefully, closer now, and you will see what I mean. It isn't a dream.
Mickey tried to sort of imprint his control on us very early. He would try and squash any ego in the band, and would try not to let us be creative.
Give him more time. And if hadn't rushed it so much, we could have done just as good a job.
We probably thought that America was a hit-and-run thing. Deep down, we thought that England was where we would build our career and carry on forever and ever.
We had $1 million deal with MGM, and they stopped paying us. They were in financial difficulty, MGM. They were going bust. But we kept sending them sort of records that were big hits in Europe.
It reached a stage with us where Mickey had said, well, I'm not going to keep giving you these, what are proven hit records, if you're not going to put them out, you know.
And we went into litigation with MGM for 1.5 years. 1.5 years without a record anywhere, and you finished. And the new boys came out on the block, mainly the Monkees.
I really can't remember how the band suddenly stopped being successful. It was, one minute we were making records, the next minute we were doing the talk of the town.
Something is happening, exciting, bewildering, you must know why. Something is happening.
What happened after the American thing had come to a bit of a full stop, we then started to work more in, for want of a better word, cabaret, in quite a grand way. And by the time it got to doing the Royal shows and the Palladium and all the rest of it, Peter was heading down that route faster than anyone else.
There's nothing about it I can do.
To be honest, I'd been trying to Herman's Hermits since about 1966 to do, not to not be in the band ever again, but when I worked on something that I wanted to do, everybody else in the band was unemployed and unemployable.
By '68, there was probably things starting to split into 2 camps, and Peter deciding, having been offered things like the Royal Command Performance, deciding that he felt he was sort of in the Tommy Steele kind of category and should be moving on himself.
I became the guy who did the press. Became the guy who did the radio. I'm the guy that Ed Sullivan talks to. I'm the one who shakes hands with the Queen Mother.
Doing the Royal Command performance, that was an honour and a high point. Also a disappointment at the same night, because it was an honour to do it, but we didn't get invited back, well, up front to meet the royal family.
And then their mothers are going, how come you didn't shake the Queen Mother's hand? We stayed up all night waiting for that, and it was just that Peter Noon. You know, I can hear it happening. And me, I didn't realise that any of this was going on.
So won't you please play a song, a sentimental song for my sentimental friend over there?
Yeah, it was on my money, yeah. I mean, there was a split in the band whereby he was on my money for most of it.
Bring the tears to her eyes, help to make her realize the love we had was just beyond compare.
But again, that towards the end, that started to get more because, you know, no, it has to be bigger, you know.
You can hear it all going on because it does, and it's not really jealousy, it's just that I appeared to all their friends to be doing much better than they were. Like, it looked like I was getting paid more money and everything because I had a better car and a bigger house.
The teardrops would fall and she'd hold me.
I naively thought that they would understand, you know, I'm doing better. Oh, good old Peter, he's doing much better than we're doing.
So won't you please play a song, a sentimental song for my sentimental friend over there?
And I'd now been a spoilt brat ever since I left school, you know. Everything was like, I did everything my way, you know. If I finished with the towels, I threw the towels on the floor. I was, you know, a brat. So what happens is that then it has to be my rules, that no more democracy. No.
Look at me now. I'm the loneliest guy in the world. People say he's a star, and he's sure to go far. Ain't he pretty?
And then Mickey sensed that, you know, the guys weren't on the records anymore. They hated him by now. He was the enemy, not me. It was his fault. We were in collusion to exclude them from the recording process. So Mickey said, look, they haven't played on a record for 2 or 3 years. Why don't we just make the records as Peter knew? Fine.
Here comes the star. He's the idol of all.
So he decided he was going to leave the band November the 5th on his birthday. He seemed to do everything on his birthday, actually. He signed every contract on November the 5th.
And it was very funny. I can't remember where the gig was, but it was kind of a joyful thing because it was a good time, you know, it's it. This is the best thing we can do.
There was no great big barnstorming nights, you know, as if we'd been on the road together every night for a year and like, this is the end.
And it was great because they took the suits off. When we came back in the restaurant, they took the suits off and trampled on, never wearing that bloody thing again.
It didn't quite work like that, you know, we'd been just doing less and less, and we didn't see each other in between at all. So when the period ran out and the gigs had run out, we stopped.
There'd be no time together. Now you're gone, still they say, here comes the star. He's the idol of all the world. Step aside.
I came to America and I said, I've got to get this going, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do some TV series, I'm going to talk to the agents, find out what I can do, I'm going to write a movie script, I'm going to do everything that I can possibly do.
Now my future's crystal clear. No more woe for me to fear. I'm going to stand this world upon its ears.
He perhaps had limitations that he didn't think he had, you know.
I think he tried to spread himself too thin. He went too many directions instead of just concentrating. You've got to go for one thing and achieve it, and then go on to something else.
It depends on how many bottles of Chateau Lafite I may have opened. No, I don't really play them, no.